the year that was between my junior and senior year of high school. So 22, 23, 24 years later.
You're getting old, fella.
Fuck you.
You were getting old. Remember you used to make fun of me for being 40? Remember? I remember.
I've had 2, possibly 3 old circumstances recently tattooing. 2 for sure. I had the day that TJ was tattooing a young lady and I was tattooing a young man, and he graduated from the same high school I went to. Well after.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I graduated 2015. I'm like, oh, I graduated in 2003. And the girl said, did you say 2003? That's the year before I was born.
Yep.
I'm like, you're an asshole.
That stings.
And then the next day, TJ was tattooing 2 young girls about Bella's age.
Uh-huh.
And they were super, super dumb because that's the vocabulary they use is not great.
Uh-huh.
And TJ said something about it. I'm like, you realize they're closer in Maddox's age than they are to us. Like they're only like 5 years older than Maddox, and we are 22 years older than them.
Ouch again.
Yeah.
Ouch again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I don't buy into that. My students try to make fun of me for being old all the time. And for some reason, that's one thing that just doesn't bother me because I'm just like, well, I'm sure I'm sure you think you got the cat by the ass right now.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty happy.
It's going to happen to them.
I'm pretty happy with life at 46. So.
Yeah.
God damn, you're 46?
Mm-hmm.
Would not go back to being a teenager. That is for damn sure.
I always tell them this, and like, I always say, listen, when you're 46, if you can put a 100-pound pack on your back and climb a mountain, then you can make fun of me. But out of all of you, I'm guessing maybe one of you will be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then what I want to say is, so use that.
Yeah.
But I don't,
Good That's probably for the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm a teacher.
You're already calling your students stupid in front of the principal.
Right. Kathy, I was going to say that, Zach, because what I always get is, and it's worse when it's not meant to be an insult, when they just really mean it. When they're like, well, when did you graduate high school? And I'm like, 97. And they're like, you graduated in the 1900s?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
The
All right. There it is. Like I said, some people will say it like to be funny, but then like when like some of these kids like genuinely like, holy crap, like you graduated in the 1900s? Like we would say the 1800s.
Right.
And then you want to throw profanities at them, and you have to contain yourself to keep yourself from getting fired.
Think about that. Like when we were in school and you learn about like the 1800s, and you learn about like that guy was born in 1893.
Yeah,
that's us now. You know what I mean?
Or like holy shit, you were, for us it was like you were born in the 60s.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh my god.
But I don't feel like I was ever like that. Like, I mean, the only people I was like that about were like my grandparents. Like you had to be 2 generations older than me for me to be like, oh my god, you were born in like the 1900s or whatever, like the 1920s.
Yeah, like I never looked at my parents like they're so old. That was never a thing.
Never.
The making me feel old came from like artists, right? So like Eminem just turned 50. You're like, what?
Oh yeah, I get that too.
Like that shit.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
Like athletes I watched when I was in high school.
Sure.
Yeah. One of my students for his final documentary, he's doing his on who's the GOAT, LeBron or MJ.
Yeah. And doesn't even know.
And we debate this stuff all the time. And I've made them watch like highlight reels of Jordan and all this, and we go along, and he's like, yeah, so like what I want to do is I'm gonna interview like some people from my generation, that have like grown up watching LeBron, and then I'm gonna interview some of you older folks who like grew up like watching Jordan back in the day. And as he's as serious as a heart attack explains, I'm just sitting there like,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Us older folks from back in the day, watching Jordan. Which, by the way, so you're way more into that kind of stuff than I am. To me,
we already
hands
talked about
down,
this.
Jordan all the way.
Yeah,
already talked about this.
Yeah,
right, Zach?
Yeah. Jordan all the way.
It's not even close. And that's not to disparage LeBron. So I keep telling him, like, LeBron's great. LeBron's number 2.
Mm-hmm. It's not the same.
But give me a fucking break.
It's not the same.
Give me a break.
I
feel like LeBron says that he's not as good as Jordan. Like, I feel like
you never know with him.
Fair.
Yeah. Well, just the thing is, like, it doesn't matter. Especially if we've already talked about. I don't remember. We've already talked about. But
it's
just
5'10". I guess we should.
Yeah. So we should get going. Jordan's a playmaker, though. He made shit happen.
Yeah, absolutely. LeBron and I graduated the same year.
Talked about this.
2 world-class athletes right there.
Who's that?
There
Me
you
and
go.
LeBron graduated together.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
He's 40.
Janet
He's the
wants
best player in the
the
world,
fun
and
to stop or whatever,
I can't
so she
run
can
at the
like
park
have
with
a
the
meal
kids.
today or something. I guess. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and end this pregame. We're gonna get going on this this main episode. So pregamers.
That's not. We're not talking about this for the main episode.
I mean, that's fine.
Seems like a good true crime.
I'll wait till I tell you about
podcast.
what's coming on Sunday. I think it's gonna be good.
Is that what you're doing?
I'm gonna go
Exciting.
for an hour.
LeBron.
Oh, great.
LeBron.
Can't wait.
LeBron
Cool.
versus Michael for Sunday's episode.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. Patreon pre-gamers. We love you guys. Thanks so much for keeping the lights on. Talk to you guys next week.
Bye, friends.
Bye, guys.
That was the smoothest
I know.
goodbye that we've had Patreon in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know that if you came out?
Shut up, idiot. We're done. There it is.
Do you know that if you made that episode, somebody would come out and be like, "Actually, Hakeem Olajuwon, you're just biased.
You ain't never see Wilt Chamberlain play."
Yeah. There you
You
go.
are so biased. Are we recording?
Mm-mm. Are you ready to record? By the way, Janet, this new you putting that in Dropbox. Why have we not been doing this the whole time? That seems like it's so much easier.
Yeah.
So much easier.
Well, live and learn.
Oh, also, I figured out the problem was
Okay.
Erica's email stopped working. We don't know how long ago because we had something from Audio Boom,
Ooh.
and I was like, why? I was like, why didn't you remind me that we had to do this feed drop or whatever? She's like, I didn't know, and I'm like they email you all this stuff. You're in charge of that. And she's like, I didn't get any email from them. And I get on her computer. I'm like,
Oh no.
oh, something happened with Microsoft where it like kicked Microsoft emails off of all Apple devices and you had to redo something to get back on.
Whoops.
And I'm like, your last email that you received was like April 15th.
Uh-oh.
She's like, yeah, I thought that was weird.
Good team.
Yeah. So, but that's why she wasn't getting the WeTransfer links.
I haven't received an email in a while.
On your Zach at NBI Studios email?
5, 6, 7 years.
No. Are we ready to start recording?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
You good?
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
Erica, I stole your pen. I just want to make sure that was clear. Ahoy, friends. Thank you for tuning into Truth and Justice. You are listening to the Friday follow-up for Season 5, Episode 46. This is a blast from the past, and we had an update on the West Memphis 3 case with a lovely discussion with Damian Eccles, Lori Davis, and Jillian Pensavalli. But before we get into that, I'm joined by Bob and Janet today. And do we have any housekeeping?
I don't think so. Nothing super new going up. We did, Eric and I on Friday had a Zoom meeting with the legal team for our Season 17 case. We're moving along. It was a good meeting. It was one of those where I almost thought the rug was going to get yanked out because there's been some developments.
Oof.
And I thought the next sentence was going to be, so never mind. And then I was going to be no problem and then have a fit because we've spent so many months working on the case. But that's not the case. There's just, we had to get some documents signed. I just got those back today. I'm still hoping that we can push through to start, the second week of June. We'll start with a new season. But should be soon. Like things look like they're coming along soon. There's a lot of moving parts on this one. Other than that, just the quick reminder that we will all be off on that I'll be gone, whatever the dates are, June 9th, whatever. Note to episode that week. You'll know when you tune in on Sunday and there's no episode that week.
Fair enough.
That one time when you tune in
Fair enough.
and there's no episode, that's the one.
Got it.
Well, I know we're a couple weeks out, but I'm very excited about this new case just based on what I can see when I come in here in the office. So,
oh yeah,
Mhm.
all
It's gonna be a
the
good case.
whiteboards and the cork board.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, complex one, and hats off to Erica. She's done such a really, really good job of sorting through all that and making it so I can navigate what's going on because there's so. I don't want to give you more away, but there's just a lot happening in this case.
Yeah.
And with that, I guess we'll get right into this. This was a cool. I enjoyed it. I haven't had a chance to talk to Damian for a little while, and so it was nice. Even before we started rolling, just being able to catch up a little bit, and him and Lori both. It was great to see both of them, and it was just I thought it was a great conversation. I already have seen we've been getting a lot of listeners that have been like, tweeting at me or sharing or commenting on posts that they are, that they've been reaching out to Miss Haygood, and hopefully that'll get things rolling again. What do you guys think?
I thought it was great. I mean, it's great to hear from everybody. Obviously, you would wish that the circumstances would be a little different. It would be
Hmm.
lovely if this was an opportunity for you all to connect about the success. I hope that that's forthcoming. I felt like everybody in the conversation was still like very optimistic, so that was encouraging. And I appreciated the way you guys approached kind of, we always talk about it, like handle with care this kind of crowd engagement, and when you ask something of people, to really be clear about what it is that you need and what's going to help the case, what's going to help the guys, and not approach it from a way that's going to be detrimental. So overall, it was a really great episode. Again, I just hope that the next follow-up is one of like, okay, something good has happened for real
We're
this
getting the
time.
testing done. I've seen
Yeah.
some great letters that some people have like sent me screenshots of like what they sent, and I've
Nice.
just seen some great ones that have just been like, "Hey, we really appreciate what you've done on the
Yes.
work you've done on the case. I'm just writing because we're all very excited to see justice finally served, and we're just hoping, would it be possible? Could you just give us an update? There's just so many of us out here that care so deeply about this case, and we just want to let you know that we're still here watching and waiting, and we would just love to see some kind of an update so we know what's going on." Things like that.
Yeah.
I hope, I don't know Sonia Haygood, but I'm hoping that those are well received.
Well, and it was really nice to hear the things that we don't know that's going on. A little bit that Lori filled us in on,
Mhm.
even though it's maddening that it's taking this long. The fact that there's been a little bit of dialogue there. I don't understand exactly what's going on with the having
There's
to
definitely
edit the petition,
questions
but
about
Yeah.
that too. Yeah.
but I'm happy that there has been dialogue, that it's not just been totally shut out.
Yeah.
So that's at least promising.
Yeah. It's just, I think the only concern is just that there hasn't been much communication,
Yeah.
because I touched base with Damien quite a bit about it, and and Damien has just had the rug yanked out from underneath him so many times that he's always just like, they're just not going to do it. I feel like they're doing it to us again. They get us right there, but then he says like everything they're saying is it's happening, but then we're like, it's been 2 months. Like, what are we waiting for here? And like,
Yeah.
nobody seems to know that, other than, that little bit that they're, then they finally will get a response. Like, we're still planning on doing the testing, just need to do some editing.
Hmm.
So yeah, hopefully that comes forward. And for me, like, it was a really big deal. It meant a lot to me that Damien was able to, trusted us enough to come on the show. Cause I mean, he just doesn't want to do it. It's so traumatic for him to do anything like this. And I
Mm.
see why, like, because we posted the Jillian and Patrick posted the episode on their feed too, to get it on more ears, and then I went ahead and posted the video. So any of you guys that haven't seen it on our YouTube channel, I went ahead and posted the video version of it too yesterday,
Oh, nice.
to put that out. And of course, that's all like just public commenting on it, and I just see there's so many great, wonderful, supportive comments on there, but then there's also like, it's so disheartening to see the trolls come out of the woodwork, and like the things they say about or to Damien, and it's just like,
Yeah.
I see why he just doesn't want to do it. Like, like he knows. Imagine knowing every time that you open your mouth to speak about justice, just wanting the truth to come out about something, knowing 100% that you're going to get bombarded with people calling you names, and
Yeah.
just everything that he deals with every day. So
It's awful.
it meant a lot to me that he was willing to do that, because it's so important to him. And that part of that conversation was that it's not just for him. In some of our more candid conversations, he's just like people forget that this is about these 3 little boys too. Like he's like, I know. He's like, I know we didn't have anything to do with this. Like,
Yeah.
whoever killed them is still out there. We just need to find out who did it. Yeah, and it was cool too to hear him, talk. When I asked him like, what is it you think life like? Because those negative comments are all, oh, he's just trying to grift money and do like he hasn't asked for a dime from anyone through any of this process. And you didn't hear in his what I think life is going to look like, that, oh well, I want to sue and get $1 million and do whatever. He's just like, I just want to be able to put this behind me and move on with my life. That's all I want. That's
Right.
all he wants.
Right. Well, I thought, when he was talking about like, I don't know. I think a lot of us can relate on some small level. Of course, everyone walks a very different path, and what happened to him was extraordinary. We all wish that it weren't. It was even more extraordinary than it is, since we know what we know about wrongful convictions.
Mhm.
But just hearing him kind of go like, I don't let myself go there and think too much about what I can't do. But then when he was talking about wishing that he could leave the country, and
Yeah.
it just, that moment, like, I appreciate that he shared that. It definitely was also a kind of a gut punch. Like, yeah,
Yeah. I didn't
like,
realize that. I don't know
yeah,
why. I guess I knew it if I thought about it, but I didn't realize that he was not able to leave the country, with
yeah.
that
I mean,
conviction on his record.
Mhm.
yeah.
Is
So
is it?
yeah.
And
Okay.
I don't know. Is it that he's not allowed to leave, or is it that he's not allowed to enter those countries?
I'm not sure.
Because it could be just the countries that he's trying to.
Yeah, it
enter.
might be.
And I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
Because where he said he wanted to go to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that he
Mhm.
couldn't go into Japan with the felony on his record.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, pretty heartwarming. I know I don't want to go on for too long because I know we've got several listener questions that we need to get through. We'll do our best to answer them. I'm sure a lot of them
Sure.
are in the legal purview.
Well, this one is an easy one. Kelly says, it was great to hear them. I followed this case since 2000, 2001, then got deep into it after Devil's Knot, the book. My question is, when did Bob, Janet, and Zach start following the case?
I have, out of the three of us, I've probably been around the case the longest.
Mhm.
I started following the case around 2002, 2003. Is kind of when I stumbled across it. It was shortly after the second Paradise Lost documentary was released, and I had gone back and watched both of those. What really tied me to it was the fact that I was about the age of Damien and Jesse and Jason, and it really kind of wrapped my head around that. And then the idea that the three boys that were murdered were my age. They're born in 1984,
Mhm.
and I was born in 1984. So I mean, I didn't really necessarily think about it in 2002, but as I think about it today, I think about that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
But so I've been around the case, following it with the Paradise Lost series, the Devil's Knot book, since early 2000s as well.
Yeah. And it's actually this case is how Zach and I got to be friends, really.
Yes.
When I started getting ready, it was like 2017 when I started working on covering the case for the podcast. I'd gone to Zach's shop to get a tattoo, and we got to talk, and we had a little, can I have your phone number?
Yeah.
Moment at the
Cute.
yeah. But yeah, it was one of those cases for me where I was working, as I've talked about many times on the show. I've never really been into much true crime.
Mhm.
So I wasn't in those circles studying this stuff. So I started working on Adnan's case. That's how this podcast started. And then other wrongful convictions. And what always came up, I remember Rick Robbia telling me, it's like, oh, I watched the West of Memphis documentary, and that's what made me think that a journalist could shed some light on Adnan's case. And everybody would always bring up the West Memphis 3 case, and I always felt like I'm like, I don't even know anything about that. And that was, I've told the story before, but in 2017, I thought, I don't know, I had a weekend at home, and I'm like, I'm going to watch these documentaries and just see what everybody's talking about with this case. And I watched them, and I went through the same emotions everybody else went through, and they watched it. And then what got me was, I still remember Mike and I were going to, we might have been going to Houston to work on Sandy Melgar's case, but we were traveling somewhere. And I was telling him about the West Memphis 3 case, like, it's this documentary is crazy, and how they, in the first one, they I think it's part 2, they convince you that John Mark Byers did it, and then 3, it's things keep flip flopping around. And I went to tell him about the victims and what happened, and I realized after spending a weekend watching 4 documentaries about the case, I had no idea what those boys' names were. Not that they never said them. I'm not saying, but it was just like they weren't the focus. And I was like kind of ashamed of myself. I'm like, how did I not, like, me doing what I do, how did I not pay enough attention that I even know what their names are? And then I started researching it more and more and more, and realized it's like they've never been the focus of any of this work. The focus has always been on Damien, Jason, and Jesse. And that's kind of where the term in that conversation with Mike is where we came up with the forgotten West Memphis Three. I was like,
Sure.
it's like there's two West Memphis Threes, and one of them was completely forgotten about once Damien, Jason, and Jesse got out of prison. And what I had learned by that point, I had spent a few years working a lot with Jim Clementi, who's been mentoring me about investigative practices and things like that. I'm like, you always start with victimology. You always, the investigation has to be focused around the victims. And so I wonder if we can go back to the beginning and start over and just do a new investigation from that perspective, not to try to clear their names, but to try to solve this murder
Right.
where we can get with it. So that's
and I don't mean to bogart this, but it's also curious to me to wonder how much help and how much hurt those documentaries caused. Obviously, it kept it in the forefront, and it saved Damien, and it saves Damien's life. These documentaries,
yeah,
but also it puts so much false narrative out there,
right.
that everybody believes that. At one point it was John Mark Byers, at
Right.
another point it was David Jacoby and Terry Hobbs, and it just kept building and building. I mean, with that being said, genuinely probably saved Damien's life because it kept it in the news.
There's no probably about it. Like 100% it did.
Yeah.
And he would tell you, like Joe Berlinger and them and Amy Berg with West of Memphis and even Mara Leverett, like all the work that was done on it absolutely did. But then, all the false narratives, I remember watching, because then I watched The Devil's Knot. I think I had already seen it because I was watching. I'm like, I've seen this movie. I saw The Devil's Knot, the movie that was an adaptation.
It was
of
like Reese
Oh,
Witherspoon.
yeah, I
of
never
Mara's-
watched that.
Yeah, it was an adaptation of Mara's book, and like the opening scene, they're riding off into the woods, and the way they shot like the scenes of the crime scene and everything, I had pictured this whole like big, huge, deep dark forest that the boys were in. And I remember when Mike and Shane Yoder, our music guy, went, because he's from Tennessee. He like went and we all met there, and we went to the crime scene to start, investigating. And I was like, what? First of all, the woods were gone. But then I just looked at the area. Then once I looked at, I'm like, it was a patch of woods the size of a football field. Like it was
Yeah.
completely different, than what I thought it was.
Yeah.
When did you first discover the case, Janet?
So I saw the first Paradise Lost. I had a lot of like documentary film nerds friends when I was in college, and
Back in the 1900s.
back in the 1900s.
Mhm.
And so, it's not fair for me to say I followed it avidly since then. Like I definitely watched everything as it rolled out in real time. But I wasn't like, I was their age.
Yeah.
And I was like a punk. I was like a goth. I had a lot of friends who got in a lot of trouble for wearing, pentagrams and eyeliner and trenches and trench coats. Like every one of my friends for a period of time looked like Damien. And so, and we like, our friends were huge Pearl Jam fans, and Eddie Vedder started advocating pretty early on for the guys. And so that was definitely, it was terrifying because I was living that life, the same thing that Eddie Vedder and like Henry Rollins and advocates like that were kind of heroes to me. When I was a teenager, where, we were like, yeah, like this feels like it's about something that we all felt. Like I still get tense when I walk past a police car.
Yeah.
And I look like a soccer mom, but that kid in you that's like used to getting in trouble, or that's used to being judged for the way you look, for whatever thing you're going through or whatever your beliefs are that you're expressing on the outside, if it's outside of the norm, or if it's considered, and this is for me in Tucson, Arizona, which is a very liberal city, but it's still Arizona. So all of that like really resonated for me and was terrifying and like really upsetting. So I think in some ways that was the first thing that got me interested in like, true crime and wrongful convictions in general. Before, I wouldn't have been like a serial killer. I wasn't interested in that kind of thing. I was interested in this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've all been, I think I was the last to come around.
Yeah. I did not know Janet was that. Janet's further along than I am. I didn't realize that.
Well, again, like I wish I could say that I was chasing and following information. It was more just like whenever there was be something else that would be released, of course I'd be like, oh, got to see that. But yeah, it's yeah. But you're right. The misinformation, that's a real thing. I definitely remember like turning to people and saying, well, this one of the stepfathers did it. His name is John Mark Myers. Like,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, when you're
He
19
had
or
his
whatever,
teeth
you don't
removed.
know.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
And look how crazy he's being.
You don't
Look at
know.
him.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's definitely tricky. Tracy says this is just a Tracy like a comment that I think we've sort of been saying in one way or another, but I thought it was kind of the right way to describe it in a different way that would still resonate for people, which is anyone else been feeling that for the longest time? In this case, the state is loosey with the football and we're all Charlie Brown. That is a very
Yeah.
good way of putting it. Yeah, that's yeah.
We're
Tracy,
hoping
yes.
in this case that it's not Lucy, that they just called a timeout to ice the kicker for a minute.
Yeah,
And
there you go.
we're gonna-
There you go. And that takes us to Veronica and Ryan kind of saying what you were saying, Zach, which is like, what do we know what it means that editing has to take place, changing the date? And this is just the concern, I think, for people is, well, wait a minute, if everything was ready to go and then it was just about one person being ill, why wasn't everything still ready to go? Like, what changed? What still needs to be tinkered with?
That's what I wish we knew the answer to that, and we just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually that was, I didn't know until I think the day we were recording that they had gotten some feedback that said they're editing, that they're editing the order. But yeah, I don't know what. I mean, I know that for over the last, since September, October, when we found out that like this is happening. There have been several renditions of the order. There was, with the addition of Jason and his team coming into the process, and so there's, discussions about labs, what's being tested, what's not going to be tested. Because it started with a very small scope because we knew we were going to fight for it, and it was like the thing we think we're the most confident in is the bindings, but once we got a prosecutor that's like, is like on our side and is like, let's make this happen. Then it's like, well, then if we got a chance, let's take as they say, shoot your shot and let's get it. So I know there's been a lot of different renditions. So it could be something like that. I don't know, but that's kind of part of the frustration is it's like, we hear, it's being edited, but what is being edited,
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, one of our listeners, wanted to kind of help at least contribute possibly, she knows it's a different situation, but if it's helpful at all, she said, from the perspective of someone who works in local government, sometimes the wheels can turn slowly for completely dull and bureaucratic reasons. For
Yeah.
example, it took me over a year to get revisions to proclamation guidelines in front of our local council. I needed input from several people. Edits had to be made based on that, and they had more pressing issues to consider, etc. This was a one-page document that just formalized things and changed very little. It's not the same, obviously, and I don't know what's happening here, but part of me is hopeful that this is the situation, in which case a lot of people asking for updates can demonstrate to all the powers be that this is something that needs to be a priority. You've got to be a squeaky wheel sometimes. My concern is that someone behind the scenes is getting in the way and creating the bureaucracy to slow this down. I don't know enough about how a prosecutor's office operates to know who that would be and what that would look like, though. But Sarah, thanks for reminding us of that. You've seen very well firsthand as well, Bob, how slow the wheels of progress can move, and sometimes it is for nefarious reasons, and sometimes it's just like the machine, right?
Oh, perfect! A perfect example. I mean, it's not the same, but along the same lines as I'm dealing with. I don't know if I've mentioned on this show, but on the pregame we've talked about it. I had sold my my cabin and property that I have up in northern Michigan, and I'm buying another property further south that has to be subdivided off of a bigger plot, and that's been months. And I just keep communicating with the seller, and what he's dealing with is getting the township government to meet and have on the agenda to approve the survey so that we can close. Like it's been months and we're still like, when are we going to close? And we're just still waiting. And it's just one of those things, there's nothing going on. Like they're telling him, oh yeah, it's going to be fine. But it's just, those small government offices like that sometimes take time. So that's always a possibility, but that's, I kind of part of what, like if you're still calling and don't stop, like, what we don't want is for them to have 2 days of people like calling, texting, like we need to like continue on, again, being very kind about it. But I think that's one of the things is like, if we could just get some communication, if we could be like, everything's fine. If we heard from Sonia Haygood, everything's fine. We're moving forward. We're just waiting on this thing to get notarized. Then we, or something, it's like everybody can take a breath, but it's like, it's because of it. And I feel bad for Ms. Haygood too, a little bit, because I think she's dealing with the 32 years
Sure.
of Lucy pulling the football away, right?
Yeah.
So like she hasn't done anything wrong, but we've become so accustomed to over these decades of like people just intentionally stonewalling, blocking the truth from coming out, doing anything they can, that it's just like I think we're always in that defensive posture where it's like, oh, things aren't going the way they're supposed to be. They're probably trying to screw us over again.
Right.
But to be clear, like there's no indication that we have that that's what's happening. But I think that she's probably, that's what's happening now as far as how we're all feeling is the result of that.
Well, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Zach. And if we talked about this and I was just reading something, like if I was reading the comments and I missed this part, but in your reference to, yeah, like the misinformation and stuff, that comes out of that kind of national and international attention. It's also that thing that happens, like we've seen with people like Adnan, where the more publicity something gets from outside of its own community. And I think that's why, we hear Jillian in your episode saying it really matters if you live in Arkansas. It especially matters. Do it no matter where you are. But is that you see this response from local law enforcement or from local criminal justice where that's like, oh, these people think they can just come in here and question our jobs and make us look stupid. And it does at this point, it doesn't even matter what's true. It's like, just F you, everyone from the outside. They sort of close ranks, and it feels like it's a violent reaction to the attention, even though that same attention is what is keeping it alive and getting someone out of prison. Right, Zach?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, definitely we do have people who weighed in and say, that feeling again of the football being taken away. Nancy says it feels so much like the police care a lot more about covering their mistakes than actually finding the killers. Are they the ones with physical custody of the evidence, even if the prosecutor has legal custody? I worry the box may have been misplaced.
Hopefully, I mean, that would be a pretty disastrous move, I think. So yeah, it was when they located the evidence after Keith Cressman told us that the evidence was gone and had been destroyed, and there was the lawsuit and all that, and then they found it, air quotes found it. It was located in the evidence room at the police department. They're the ones that have it, and I believe that's still physically where it's at. But for it to like disappear now would be like, this has been actively being litigated since it was seen and photographed by the defense. So like for them to like claim now like, oh, we lost it, like, no, that's just, so I don't suspect that would even be on anybody's mind. I've also seen, I don't know, did somebody in there ask a question I thought I saw about concerns about tampering with the evidence?
That's the next question from Jennifer. Yeah.
So Jennifer had asked, like, are we worried about, they have Damien and Jason and Jesse's DNA, that things can be tampered with, or I mean, all we can do is hope that that's not, that they wouldn't do that someone has some shred of conscience. I don't personally, I'm not concerned about that. I don't think, we're not dealing with Gary Gitchell anymore. There's so many generations that have come and gone out of that department since then. I just don't think that there's somebody in that department now that is willing to risk their career and reputation and perhaps their freedom to try to frame somebody. To what end? Like, so remember, they're out on an Alford plea. There's zero risk of them going back to prison. Like if they were to test this DNA and Damian Eccles' DNA was all over everything, then it would, cause the public to be like, F you, Damian. But that's the consequence of it, right? Because they've already pled guilty and served their sentence. That's how the Alford plea works. So like, to what end is somebody going to take that risk just so they can be like, haha, gotcha. And also so that we don't find, and also even if they did that, like say they were to, plant some of Damien's DNA on some of this evidence, it's still not going to get rid of the other DNA that's there.
Good point.
You know what I mean? So they would test it, be like, well, Damien's DNA is there, but so is this serial killer's DNA. That's weird.
Right.
Well, and it seems like with the age of the evidence too, that it would be noticeable.
It would be tampered with. We learned about that.
I think we talked about that. Yeah.
gosh, which case was that we worked on where they talked about the degradation of the DNA? Oh,
You
that
would
was in
expect to see a certain
it was
degradation.
in the Pinion Pines case.
Right. Yeah.
On
On the
the
business
business
card.
card where the expert said that you can tell in the electropherogram that by the degradation of this DNA is what you would expect if it has been like out and exposed to the elements for over a year. In that case, when they're talking about like Christian's DNA on that business card. So yeah, so I don't know a whole lot about it, but based on that, I would assume that if they took something out of a vial of blood that had Damien's DNA and put it on there, one, the sheer volume of DNA that would create that shouldn't be there in these circumstances.
Hmm.
And it would, not show, 32 years of degradation of being exposed to, even though it's, kept in a bag in an evidence room, it's still being exposed to some environmental issues as opposed to like a vial of blood somewhere or something like that. So yeah, obviously it's always a concern, particularly in this case, but I'm not, it's not something I have a big concern about.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, like we all totally understand anyone being concerned about that. Again, it is, if ever there's a case to be worried about just the worst possible case scenario, there has not been a whole lot of acts of trustworthiness that have happened up to this point. But I agree that the hope would be that there's a pretty distinct difference between obfuscation that is passive and obfuscation that is active. Like it's easy to say you lost something. It's a lot different to say, I don't know anything about DNA. I'm just like a sheriff or whatever, but I'm going to go ahead and like pull something out of a bag and put it into a different, like that feels like, woof, okay, buddy.
It's like I said, it's a huge risk.
Yeah.
And I just, and keep in mind, like when I've been there working on the case, like I've met several West Memphis police officers, and even have talked to them about like what I was doing. And Zach, you remember when we were down there, the one officer, when the judge was not letting us go inside in that sweltering heat, like, that one police officer that was like charged with doing that, like brought us over water and was like, he was apologizing and was like, if somebody needs to get in my car or something, he's like, I'm sorry. Like these are, I just don't want to ever cast with that broad of a brush to be like, oh, you're a West Memphis cop, so you're crooked. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure there are a lot. Oh, go ahead.
I remember him saying he didn't know why they were doing that even.
Yeah. He didn't even know anything about the case. He was like, I don't understand why they're doing this. I've never seen them do anything like that. And he was a veteran. Like he was like a lieutenant.
Yeah. And
we're like, well, it's because it's this case. And he was just like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Anne says, when Damien talks, every word is meaningful, that he did not allow the state to stamp out his soul as a testament to his resilience and grace and Lori's love and support. 3 young boys had their future ripped from them, but the tragedy continues with the state-sanctioned attempts to snuff out the future and freedom of 3 more men. On a side note, I was lucky enough to visit Reading Prison when it was briefly open to the public after closing. Famously, Oscar Wilde was imprisoned there. Even empty, Anne says, I was struck by how it seemed entirely designed to snuff out hope and potential. It's a wildly vast question. But do Bob and the team have any thoughts about how the prison system could better nurture and utilize the skills and creativity of the incarcerated?
I mean, the big thing is that if our prison system had a focus on rehabilitation instead of retribution, I think that would be where it would start. And the privatization of our prisons takes us even more steps away from that. That's the only way. Like you have to look at like some other countries do, where the purpose of people being in prison is to try to rehabilitate them into, because then you start looking at, well, how we've taken their freedom, but how can we still give them opportunities to grow as a person while they're in here? So when they come out now, we're talking about life sentences and death penalty cases, but there's so many other, where maybe they're going to serve 10 years in prison. If we looked and had a focus of, okay, in 10 years, this person's going back into society. Our job is to make them a better person when they get released into society in 10 years. Then I think if you had that mindset to begin with, then I think then you start looking for what are the avenues, what are the opportunities, what can we do to make that happen? So I think it's just like this, it's this whole, I always talk about when I do like behavioral analysis, even when I taught management classes before, when you have like a behavior that's happened. I talked about this before with Dr. Shiloh and Dr. Scott were on the show, where it's like you start with, when we teach people in management courses, like, how do you handle a personnel issue? It's like, well, you have some sort of consequence that brought this to your attention. So that consequence came from an action. So what was the action? But then a lot of people will correct the action and it never corrects the problem, because that action came from a thought. Every action, there was a thought that happened before the action. So if we can move back to the thought, and the more forward thinking people will actually try to think, what was this person thinking? And if we can address that, but there's even one step before that, which is the core beliefs of that person. Like, if we can try to figure out, like, what's going on with this person, what is their core belief that's leading to these thoughts, that are leading to these actions, that are leading to these consequences. And if we can try to address that, then we can fix a whole slew of problems, right? So it's that same concept, I think, for the prison system, is if we can get all the way back to this core belief of they're here to punish them, as opposed to they're here for us to rehabilitate them. Their freedom being taken is the punishment. Your job is to rehabilitate them. And that's why, one of the reasons why I'm not a proponent at all, I'm sure probably almost everyone listening to this, of the privatization of the prisons, for so many reasons you can name. But the big one is, if it was a government, if prisons were run by the government, and then you have like a point of attack, then we can go to the government that is, the government, the legislators in the state of Arkansas that are in charge of how all the prisons in Arkansas are operated. And you can make your case and convince those lawmakers to make a change, then it can be implemented. But when you have, different for-profit corporations that are running all these prisons, it just becomes a jumbled up mess, and it's just a very hard error to correct.
Well, also, isn't it like you should be a little bit worried about a capitalist company that actually profits from more people being in their
Yeah.
prisons?
Yeah, and that's
I mean,
what I meant
that's
by there's a
tricky.
whole
Yeah.
lot of other issues
Yeah,
besides that, but like that core
Like, oh,
one.
so we're incentivized to put people in prison. Cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. So there's a million reasons we can go on about it all day, but that's one of the to address like this particular question. Like, I think that's, if you could, deprivatize the prisons, and then try to push for a mindset shift in what the purpose of the prison is, it
mhm.
would have to start there, and that's a big task to
Yeah,
tackle.
people get overwhelmed by it, and I think it's easier. I get it, but, it's just sometimes it's easier to just go, "Oh, they're different from me, they're animals, they're like,
Well,
I
and
don't
that's
have
just
to
it.
think about it. If I just know you're over there, then you're"
And that's the problem too, right? And I'm not even saying that's like a bad, like, I'm not like knocking anybody for having this, but there's always, and this is true of anything, right? There's like my idealistic view on a thing, and then there's, well, what if it's me?
Right.
So like, say the death penalty, for example. Like, I don't believe in the death penalty. I don't believe in state-sponsored murder. You never want, there's a chance somebody will be put to death and they're innocent. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. And then somebody, you know, sexually assaults and murders your child, and you're like, fuck you, you kill him, put him to death. You know what I mean? So
Right.
that there's some of that too, where these people can have this idealistic view of it, but then it's like, well, this person did something wrong to me, and I want them punished. I don't care if their life is good, which is, and again, I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. It's just reality. Like, that's just how humans work, and
Sure.
that creates more problem too.
Yeah. Uh Natasha just this is the last comment. Just wanted to say I think how many people felt how heartwarming it was to hear Damien and Lori's feelings towards Bob and Jillian, how much they love and trust you, and that he wouldn't talk to just anyone. Totally understandable about after all he's been through, which you mentioned as well. Yeah, I mean it's lovely to hear about that kind of community and that sort of chosen family thing, right? Where you see that you end up finding people that you can lean on, that you depend on, that you love, and you kind of never know when those people are going to come into your life. And we should
Yeah.
all be so lucky to have, people who show up for us time and again in that way. It's that was very, very heartening, despite everything that's going on, or maybe because of everything that's going on. It's just lovely to hear that kind of thing, because it makes you think about the people like that in your life, or how you can be like that for someone else.
Yeah. And like I said before, it means a lot to me. And I don't know, that could be the last interview you ever see with Damien Eccles, because I haven't asked him, but I suspect that if this testing goes through, and the testing unequivocally proves their innocence and finds out who killed those boys and they go to prison, I would be shocked if Damien has any interest at all in going on a podcast or TV
Right.
or anything to talk about it. I think he's finally his years of misery will be over, and he's going to just go to Japan and go to that dojo and meet that grandmaster or whatever it was that he wanted to do. I think that's why, Damien is one of the, Ed and Jesse and a lot of in the early days, and Damien is one of those people where, I've talked about this before, that I try to keep that kind of journalistic boundary between me and the people that I'm working with, so much so that I try to like back off it because I get too emotionally attached and I don't ever want it to affect my reporting. And that's also why I'm very transparent about it when it happens. But Damien was just one of those people, and I never suspected it. I saw Damien in, Paradise Lost series and all that, and he's this, gothy guy that's, the perspective that you have of him, and it was just like, he's just the subject of this investigation that I'm doing. And I went and I met him and talked to him, and it was, I don't know, it was just shocking to me that when I met him, I'm just like, we became to the point where like I consider him a wonderful friend. We talk as much as we can about anything besides the case. And it's just, and part of that thing, what I always admire about him is I can't imagine how hard it is to go through all of this that he's been through. And everybody in the world wants to, talk to you about it. And for you to say that chapter of my life is over, and I have, I've missed out on these years, and from here on out, I'm moving forward with building a new life. And that, to me, that's just so, it's admirable. It's amazing. Like the type of, you guys only get a taste of it if you like see him being interviewed or speak or whatever. But the amount of strength it takes, I think, to be able to do that and actively work at doing that has just always been so impressive to me. So
and he's a really good, no, totally. And he's a great example of kind of the reminder that like we as a culture place so much value on fame, as if that's something that we assume, like, and I don't mean me, because I fortunately have had many friends who have been famous who have been some of the most unhappy people I've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you see the trolls come out, when you see people being like, oh, he just wants the attention, he's just like basking in the spotlight and stuff, it's like, well, part of that is because we have created a culture and society where we think that matters, or that equals some sort of happiness or success in some way, when Damien's a perfect example of someone standing there going, I didn't want this. I don't want this. I don't like that it exists. All it is about is a thing that happened to me that shouldn't have happened. And people need to shift their perspective and realize like, oh yeah, you know what? The end game is not to be famous. Like, it shouldn't be for anyone. That doesn't mean anything. And it can be very hard and upsetting and alienating,
Yeah. And I just want to share, and then we're going to wrap on this, but I want to share just one more perspective about it. Cause I see, I don't get a lot of comments on our YouTube videos because I don't promote our YouTube channel much other than our live streams. And but it was set to where like I keep getting an email every time somebody comments on something. So I'm like seeing these pop into my email. So I'm seeing some of these troll comments, because generally I try just to not read the comments. But I see people say, a few people shitty comments like, doesn't want to be famous. You're not famous. You're just a grifter trying to, shit like that. Right. And I want to tell you that to tell you this. I promise you, if Damien, and I know this, I know this. If Damien said, I will interview on any podcast or any documentary or anything, it's $5,000 an interview, he would be booked every single day of the week. So think about that. And to be clear, I've never paid, Damien's never asked for a dime from me for anything. I don't pay him for anything. He's done the interviews with me because he trusts me and he wants to do them. But like I've witnessed like people like offering him all kinds of money to do. Like he could be on a talk show circuit. He could do so many things if he cared about that money. So like, it's not like, I don't know. I think that's worth knowing.
Yeah.
For all you assholes that think that they call him a grifter or whatever shitty thing that you and your miserable little life likes to call him. Like, you could not be any further from the truth. If Damien wanted that, he could be that. Very easy. Wouldn't you have to work at it? I mean, he gets bombarded with interview requests daily and turns every single one of them down. And many of them offer him money for it, and he doesn't want anything to do with it. He just wants to live his life. So I'm going to end that conversation with that before I get even more pissed off. People.
Wouldn't it be amazing if just every time somebody wanted to write a shitty comment, they took that energy and just did a kindness for someone else?
Amazing.
Like,
it would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure that'll happen.
Yeah. Last thing I want to leave you guys with is let you know what's coming up Sunday, because I'm pretty excited about it, actually. So back when we were going over the Richard Allen confessions, and we were going through and we were really talking a lot about the read technique, and I was giving you kind of my assessment of how Richard Allen was responding to the tactics they were using. A question came up from a number of people, both on the show here in the live and emails people have sent me, saying, well, but what does it look like if someone who we know, I think you even asked it, Janet, if someone who we know is guilty,
yes,
was subjected to these, and what do those reactions look like? And I thought that would be a great thing to do, because even for the people that disagree with my assessment, right, I think it would be awesome for people to see at least, like, it's based in logic and reason. It can be wrong, but like, it's from studying things like this and the types of reactions you're looking for. So what I've done, this is a very busy week. It's, you know, we're coming up on like graduation week and stuff at school. So I'm, you know, I got a lot of balls in the air right now. I'm juggling. So I thought, I looked it up. I'll get to my point right now. I thought of the Chris Watts case. For those who aren't familiar, 2018, Colorado murdered his wife and children. That was an instance where he was interviewed. The interviews are public. The video and audio of his interviews are public, where you hear him go from denying, and then faltering all the way into a confession. And so I was reviewing that, and it's a great look at what does it look like? Like, we know for a fact this person did it and he's lying, and you're seeing how he reacts. And then when I reviewed the video, I found it's literally the exact same tactics that were used in the Richard Allen case were used on Chris Watts, and the reactions are very different. So in this week's episode, I give a whole explainer about that. And then I'm not playing the whole thing. It's still long. I took an hour of his interrogation, because it's a great hour, because it goes from it's kind of the same spot as Richard Allen going into a second police interview, the phase where they present them with the damning evidence, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we had with Richard Allen where it was just denial, that's impossible, couldn't be. And we get to hear, how does someone who is guilty react to that same situation? And then, it's the same parallels, even down to they bring a family member into the room to try to bring him over the edge. So it goes from presentation of the evidence, denial, taking, creeping over a little bit, the police offering the suggestion, just like they did in Richard Allen, like, well, maybe it was, for this reason, and then taking that and going with it. And so you get to see all the way that to a confession. So that's going to be this Sunday's episode. So it's for you guys. Now you've learned so much about the read technique and how it works from these last few episodes. You're going to get to hear it applied in a completely different situation where we know we have a guilty person. I'm excited for you to hear it. I'm excited to talk about it. And we're going to do that in next week's Friday follow-up. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
And stop.
My big fat friend Bob over here.
You son of a bitch. Whatever, 243 guy.
Oh,
you know what? Just so you guys know, he weighs 5 pounds more than me. If you take one of them logs of Jimmy Dean's sausage, that's 1 pound.
Stack 5.
Imagine stacking 5 of those sons of bitches.
This is making me feel like I weigh as much as a feather. It's wonderful.
Yeah, you figure half of that for Janet, who's probably taller than both of us. Not true, but not far off.
not true.
All right.
I just don't think people sometimes realize how big you and I are.
Right, until they're just well, because they always see us together, so they don't realize that we're both like massive human beings.
Yeah.
We got some
But,
pics, some full body pics at
Mhm.
Obsessed Fest.
yeah, but
Of the three
just
of
so you
us.
know, 98-pound less massive for me over 2.5 years. Thanks, First Form.
Yeah. Thanks, First Form.
Firstform.com/truth.
Yeah. There you go.
All right,
Who's
we're
listening
gonna.
to this? A handful of people.
It's
Because
all
we're
32
understaffed.
people. Yeah. All right, we're gonna end this live stream. See everybody on the live stream. Bye bye.
Thanks,
Bye, guys.
everybody.
One of these